After Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s disastrous hearing that we covered, leading to Democrats calling for his resignation, and then even Republicans were really shocked and horrified by his behavior in that hearing and him not being able to understand basic concepts or defend what he's doing at HHS. And again, I really want to make America healthy again, strong again, powerful again. MAGA, whatever. Technically in name, yeah, I want to make America healthy, but he's not doing that. And instead of like helping close economic gaps that push people into less healthy lifestyles, or helping reducing our reliance and addiction to ultra-processed foods through investments in school programs, etc. Instead, I'm just gonna ride right through that one. Instead, he's pushing reliable experts out of his organization and attacking vaccines despite him promising not to. But what was really interesting was after this, he went on to complain on Fox News about how the hearing went. And he ends up saying something, knowingly or unknowingly, that is just an own of Trump. Let's listen. Let's listen. Let's see. Shall we listen together? Are you ready? While we're listening, click the subscribe button. Also, you can get the members only bonus show by clicking the join button. That would be greatly appreciated. What does Bobby have to say?
They want to make a little speech and then shut me down. But they can't deny the fact that we did worse than COVID. That the CDC is a broken agency. We did worse in COVID than any country in the world. We have 4.2% of the world's population. We have 20% of the world's COVID deaths. We literally we're the worst team in the league. I've been brought in as the new manager, and my job is to shake up the organization, to fire the people who were responsible for masking our children with no science, for social distancing orders with no science, for all the other things, for all of the other things that they try, for closing our schools at the behest of the teachers union and hurting workers all over America. These were bad. We literally did worse than any country in the world, and it was because we forgot about the science.
Okay, Bobby, interesting point. Very interesting point. He uses a team analogy. Let's say we are Texans fans, Houston Texans, NFL, okay, for our non-sports viewers, and they've had a lot of struggles since I've been a kid. They've done pretty good all the seasons, but like I want to go all the way. CJ Stroud, come on, right? But imagine, if you will, after we lost our first game of the season, it was annoying. The management said we need a new coach, right? He used that analogy sort of. He was like, they need to bring in somebody else to head up this team, using him. This would be like, and I haven't seen them play this season, but just wait. This would be like saying, all right, get rid of the Texans coach. I'm a fan. How would I forget? Say it.
D'Amico Ryan?
Yes, amazing. Hot. Unrelated. Have you seen specs? Whatever. That's not why I watched the game. So it would be like saying, hey, fire him and replace him with the Jaguars coach. Are they still bad? They're still bad, right? They're like notoriously bad. Or the Browns coach. Are they bad? I don't know. Okay, I'm just starting to get back in NFL. I probably should work this out more, but the point is, it's like replacing him with Coach Cole, someone who's never coached before. It would be a terrible call. That's what they did here. He's right. We managed COVID worse, especially at the beginning, than our counterparts. But why? You picked the guy who was representative. Trump picked the guy who was representative of the problem that caused that to come in and solve the problems. Bobby was out holding rallies, being completely opposed to thoughtful responses. and then you put him in charge. So the part that's embarrassing for Trump, yeah, Aaron Rupar said RFK Jr. owns Trump, is that if you're at all honest and you analyze why we did so poorly handling the pandemic, you would come to the conclusion that it had a lot to do with the chaos of the Trump administration. And even if you want to accept that, who was the president when the pandemic started and started raging? And then, obviously, it kept raging. Biden took over. But ultimately, what was the great economic triumph and who was president at that point in time? All right. So, very strange he would use that to justify his own presence, given that he is representative of the type of voices that skewed Trump's response so terribly. Slow the testing down. UV inside the body, right? These different sound bites run through your head. And Trump actually has been kind of softly contradicting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. lately.
Another Florida question, the vaccine mandates that were rolled back for school children. What do you think about that?
Well, I think we have to be very careful. Look, you have some vaccines that are so amazing. The polio vaccine, I happen to think, is amazing. A lot of people think that COVID is amazing. You know, there are many people that...
Yeah, a lot of people think that COVID is amazing.
Believe strongly in that. But you have some vaccines that are so incredible. And I think you have to be very careful when you say that some people don't have to be vaccinated. It's a very tough position. So I'd give you an answer. I'll give you a feeling. But just initially I heard about it yesterday, and it's a tough stance. Look, you have vaccines that work. They just pure.
He's your guy. He's responding to the question about the hearing, is my understanding. He's your guy. You know, it's a really tough stance, that thing that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is saying. Well, then fire him? You could. Fox had to fact check some of the claims that were swirling.
Many people who want vaccines, I understand it's about the mandates, may now have trouble getting them. For example, you have to get a prescription, or there are lots of states where you just can't get it. It's not available unless you're in one of those highly suspect groups, because they would depend on CDC guidance. And right now, there is no CDC guidance.
So the chaos that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is bringing is having real impacts on vaccinations, despite him trying to claim otherwise. And then kind of in this same ideological vein, you have Florida taking this widely publicized action that I want to show you the Florida Surgeon General's response to on CNN. It was something, but the context is BBC reports Florida's aiming to become the first U.S. state to cancel all of its vaccine mandates, many of which require children to get jabs against diseases like polio in order to attend public schools. The Florida Surgeon General, Joseph Ladapo, likened the mandates to slavery, and he's announcing the plans. Can we stop with these comparisons to slavery on everything? Vaccine mandates are like slavery. So this is like a little Robert F. Kennedy Jr. 2.0, because obviously Bobby was out there saying something similar. Vaccinations are slavery. But do we have the thing? At least Anne Frank was able to hide in an attic, is literally something he said. And we have a disclaimer, this is not intended as mockery. It's simply my I said impression, not interpretation.
That's my bad. We'll fix it for next time.
Seriously, it's nothing to mock physical, things. It's just kind of a way so that you know who I'm impersonating. But here is Dr. Joseph Ladapo, and he gets asked, did you run any projections as to how removing these mandates, especially for school children, it's such an important way early to protect people and protect other people from those people medically and disease-wise from people's favorite diseases like COVID, according to Trump. And here he gets asked, did you run any projections? Did you analyze data on what this could do in the spread of these diseases? And the Florida Surgeon General is like, of course not.
Vaccine mandates absolutely positively should not be something that is part of our society.
I'm looking at this report from your department from April. showing that more people in Florida are seeking religious exemptions for vaccines. And at the same time, Florida is seeing rising cases of hepatitis A and whooping cough and chickenpox. This is in your own report, your own department's report. Before you made this decision to try to lift vaccine mandates for Florida, which include obviously public schools, did your department do any data analysis? Did you do any data projection of how many new cases of these diseases there will be in Florida once you remove vaccine mandates?
Absolutely. So absolutely not, because it's not a, you mentioned whooping cough there. So there's this conflation of the science and sort of what is the right and wrong thing to do. So scientifically, you mentioned whooping cough. So that's an example. This is part of the issue with informed consent. That's an example of a vaccine that is ineffective. The data show that it's ineffective at preventing transmission. So sort of mandates with that really don't have anything to do with the notion of transmission. And then in terms of, like analysis, well, ultimately, this is an issue very clearly of parents' rights. So do I need to analyze whether it's appropriate for parents to be able to decide what goes into their children's bodies? I don't need to do an analysis on that.
So you're trying to lift the vaccine mandate in Florida, and your department and you did not even do a projection as to how this could impact public health. So you have not prepared hospitals in the Florida counties most at risk with the best treatments for any outbreaks of measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough, polio, and you have not looked into how many kids might now get these preventable diseases? That's what you're saying?
No, that's what you said. What I'm saying is...
Well, you said absolutely not to the question about if you had done those things. So that is what you said. We mandate all sorts of things to keep the public safe. Even if you think for your body it's acceptable to drive at 100 and drink, you can't do that to keep your fellow people safe. And there are all sorts of exemption options for people if they have real reasons that they don't want to have the vaccines. But if you don't place a requirement, for example, for public schools, for kids to get their vaccinations, even people who are perfectly fine with vaccines are gonna not do it. Like, I remember right before school starts and the requirement for when we had to prove that I had this shot and that shot, I'm screaming because at that point I was scared of needles. Now I'm not. But I'm saying, please, no. My mom's like, I'll get you a milkshake if you go to the doctor's office. And then I went to my doctor's office, and my particular doctor, little strange, to be honest, hands really cold when she would do the check, and it was like, whoa, and it was not the best place. You don't know, because you're like, oh, I'm going in for a shot, and they're like, yeah, and also let me touch your genitals. What? They're fine. I checked them myself, lady. So I would hate it. One time I had an ear thing. My eardrum exploded, and she just kept sticking a Q-tip in there and being like, it's still broken. I know. And I went to a different doctor, and they fixed it with one medication. She just been digging around with her Q-tip nonstop. So I didn't look forward to going. And probably if it wasn't a requirement, there would be a much higher chance, even though my parents believe a lot in vaccines, and being like, I don't know, we'll get to that later. We got to go get his football pads first. But because it was mandated, we went and did it. And then if you actually have an authentic rejection, you have a religious exemption or something, or medical reason, then you can get exempted. But your general population isn't going to have the vaccine rates at the same level if you remove these requirements for public schools, and it will have a huge impact, and a bunch more people will die who didn't have to.
That it's an issue of right and wrong in terms of whether parents should be able to control, have ultimate authority over what happens to their kids' bodies. And in terms of outbreaks, we do have outbreaks in Florida, just like every state, and we manage those. So there are no new special procedures that need to be made.
Right, but you're talking about doing something that no other state has done.
We manage them just as always.
But you're talking about doing something that no other state in the United States has done, and removing the vaccine mandate for public schools. You're making a decision that no other Surgeon General in the United States.
Yeah. Also, we have parental rights, of course, and you have rights for the children. And so there's all sorts of things as a parent you can do that will be determined to be neglect or abuse of a child if it's not in the interest of their safety. So there is that constant balance between the rights that we have as individuals and the interest of the society that we're in, and plenty of them they're totally fine with. But on this one, something that for your hardcore, I can never have a vaccine person, probably won't make a fundamental difference, as I said before, because of the exemption process. And they could have even widened that if they wanted to make it easier. But the underlying requirement pushes up rates so much in a way that allows us to get under control so many different diseases. And if you're going to start banning things for school or whatever, or removing requirement, can you remove the requirement of the genital test? This is it, okay? And my mom's in the room. Gosh, as a kid, not anymore. I bring my mom, I'm scared. And they're like, all right, they pull it out and they reach and they just squeeze and then they pull their hand out. What did you find out doing that? Literally, you remember? That's what happened. I remember the test. It was like 10 seconds max of just like fondling. No, that's the test. He thinks that I'm admitting that I got. No, they just test and they make sure that there's no like bumps or something. But what could you possibly find out that I have by just squeezing me? Doctors, you can write in and explain that one to me.
Balls in their hands.
Had to. Yeah, even a Fox medical analyst said this is a bad idea. The genital test. No, the vaccine thing.
Let's talk about this.
Did I said subscribe in this segment, yeah. But since I thought of it again, a lot of people will write and say they thought they were subscribed and then they checked and they weren't. So just make sure that you are, because it is very helpful. I appreciate all of you.
Talk about the state of Florida. The Florida Surgeon General is saying that when it comes to vaccines, parents should have the right to decide what they put in their children's bodies, wanting to end the vaccine mandates for public schools down in Florida. Good idea or bad idea?
Bad idea. I wrote an op-ed yesterday in foxnews.com, thanks to our great digital team, that there's two reasons for vaccination. One is personal choice, protect yourself. The other is protect your community. And it depends on the vaccine. And during the pandemic, with all of the mandates, we lost sight of one of the main reasons for vaccination, protecting the community. And when it comes to the measles vaccine, it's a wildly contagious virus and an incredibly effective vaccine at preventing spread that's been around for 60 years. So the individual has a right, but so does the school. The school has a right to say, how do I create a safe environment? How do I protect children who can't take a vaccine? It's like nobody out there would say, can I bring a knife to school? Of course you can't. And you can't bring measles to school either. So we want to protect people who can't be vaccinated against measles. That's the reason for community immunity. Two concepts. Personal choice, yes. Community immunity also, depending on which vaccine we're talking about.
Okay, the op-ed.
Community immunity. I like it, sir. So even Fox isn't super convinced by that argument, and it all trickles down, you know? There's this ideological fallacy that the MAGA world has bought into, and now it's happening in the federal government, it's happening in Florida, and who knows where else. By the way, if anyone writes in saying, Luke, it's so important for the safety and the future of people's genitals for them to get checks, don't discourage it. I know, it was a joke. I loved it.